Secretary, will you please call the roll?
Thank you, Madam Chair. Chairwoman Johnson.
Present.
Vice President Simone.
Present.
Member Bettencourt. Member Hirsch.
Present.
Member Jack Foley.
Present.
Member Medeiros. Member Scholl.
Present.
Executive Director Miguel Nunez.
Present.
Legal Counsel Member Garcia.
Present.
Thank you, Madam Chair.
Thank you. Agenda item number 1, the board may discuss and vote to approve the minutes of the meeting of November 5th, 2024. Do I have a motion?
Second.
Moved and seconded. All in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. Agenda item number 2, the board will review all requests for recounts or any other protests submitted for the November 5th, 2024 statewide general election in accordance with Chapter 19 of Title 17 of the Rhode Island General Laws. And it sounds like the first one we will look at is Representative District 15, Christopher G. Poplawskis and Maria A. Bucci. Miguel?
Good morning, members of the board. I just want to summarize the recount request first, and then I will go one by one through each of them. We've received 9 recount requests by the November 12th deadline, which was Tuesday at 4 p.m. Based on the staff's calculations, 6 of these requests qualify for a refeeding of the ballots through the voting equipment. 1 qualifies for a rereading of the electronic media, and 3 do not qualify based on our calculation. In order to be eligible for a manual refeeding of ballots, Rhode Island General Law 1719-37.1 requires that the losing candidate be trailing the winning candidate by 2%, and there are different criteria on that, which I'll go over as we go into the spreadsheet. Additionally, in order to be eligible for a rereading of the electronic storage media from the DS200s and the DSA50s, the statute requires that the losing candidate trail the winning candidate by 5% of the total votes cast. So we'll go through the recount requests here. You have a recount request in Representative District 15, and also a request in Senate District 29 and Barrington Town Council. Can you go back one slide? Or forward one side. There you go. No, go back to the first one. Okay, and next. Then you also have a request in Barrington Town Council and Woonsocket City Council, Pawtucket School Committee, Representative District 66, Representative District 21, and Richmond Town Council. I will note that in the Richmond Town Council request, the candidate also included a request for the Charahoe Richmond School Committee. However, and that was from Mr. Michael Colasante. He is not a candidate in the Charahoe Richmond School Committee contest. He did submit an email, which I gave to you just before the meeting, that he believes that he has standing because he is the chair of the Republican Town Committee in Richmond. However, the regulations indicate that the candidate has to make the request for the recount, which I informed him of. So at this time, the request before you is for the Richmond Town Council race, in which he was a candidate, but he qualifies for a rereading of the electronic media.
Miguel, was there one more, the Warwick City?
And then you have the Warwick City Council Ward 4 contest as well. So we can go through each contest individually. In the Representative District 15 contest, the winning candidate is Christopher G. Poplawskis, and he is facing Maria Bucci. Ms. Bucci trails the winning candidate by 22 votes. And based on our calculations, she would qualify for a manual refeeding of the ballots into the voting equipment. Senate District 29, Peter Apollonia Jr. against Anthony DeLuca. The winning candidate, Mr. Apollonia, leads the trailing candidate by 65 votes. And based on our calculations, Mr. DeLuca does qualify for a refeeding of the ballots into the voting equipment.
Excuse me 1 second, Director. Ray, do we need a motion on each of these to approve the request for recount or refeed on each one?
Since the statute speaks of the board doing the recounts, yes, there should be a vote for each of these.
So do you want us to do them one by one, I guess is my question.
That, you can do it either way, but it might be easier if you just break it down one by one. Once you hear about the numbers presented by Mr. Nunez, you could then vote on those.
Okay. So with regard to Representative District 15, I would move to approve the manual refeeding of the ballots as described by the director.
Okay, moved by Vice Chair DeSimone. Do we have a second?
I'll second.
Seconded. All in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? Any abstentions? The ayes have it. And do we have a motion to approve the refeed for Senate District 29?
So moved.
Second.
Moved and seconded. All in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Any opposed? Any abstentions? The ayes have it.
The next contest is Warwick City Council Ward 4. That contest is between Salvatore DeLuise and Joanne Miller. Joanne Miller trails the winning candidate by 53 votes. And based on the staff's calculation, this request does qualify for a refeeding of the ballots into the voting equipment.
Thanks, Director. Do I have a motion to approve the refeed for Warwick Council Ward 4?
So moved.
Second.
Moved and seconded. All in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? Any abstentions? The ayes have it.
The next contest, I would like to skip over for the moment, Barrington Town Council, because the candidate is on their way here, and if we can push that for later in the meeting until they get here.
Sure.
The next contest is the Woonsocket City Council, Christina Fox versus Shabazz Raja. Ms. Raja trails the winning candidate by 14 votes. And based on the staff's calculation, this does qualify for a refeeding of the ballots into the voting equipment.
Thanks, Miguel. Do I have a motion to approve the refeed for the Woonsocket City Council?
So moved.
Moved and seconded. All in favor.
have a
signify-
question?
I just have a quick question.
Oh, sorry.
Good, just, Miguel, can you just include who, I presume in this case, it's the trailing candidate and all
Correct.
the,
In
with
each
the
of these-
exception of the Barrington one is all, the trailing candidate that made a valid request to
Correct.
recount. Okay, thank you.
Thanks, Commissioner. All in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Any abstentions? Motion approved.
The next contest is the Pawtucket School Committee. That is Matthew Wildenhain against David C. Fargnoli. Mr. Fargnoli is the trailing candidate who made the request. He trails the winning candidate by 2,716 votes. Based on the staff's calculation, under the statute, this contest does not qualify for either a refeeding of the ballots into the voting equipment or a rereading of the memory electronic media into our election management system. So they do not qualify based on the staff's assessment.
Okay.
Madam Chair, I'll make a motion to deny the request for a recount or refeed in this case. Does he get to speak?
So that, I was going to ask if, Miguel, if you could just let us know what the contact has been with the requester. And Ray, I mean, I don't know if the numbers being what they are, if, we do open it up for,
There's no, nothing in the statute that speaks to a hearing by the parties. if you meet the statutory requirements, you're entitled to the recount. It's a matter of law.
Is there a question about what this, how?
Who do you represent,
Excuse
sir?
me?
Who do you represent?
You're asking me a question. How do
Okay, well, then you can ask that direct that to the chair. If she wishes to accept a question during the proceedings, she may take it, but
There appears to be a question about how the difference is calculated. In other words, is the percentage based on the difference between the number one? This is an unusual election because you've got a number of people running for 7 spots. So is the differential between the first candidate, the top vote getter, and the person who lost? Or is the differential calculated between the bottom voter and the person who lost? So it would appear that if, based on my calculation, that if the difference is calculated on the next winner, then there may be the condition met to apply for a recount. I have that correctly.
Two things. Miguel, do you want to speak to that? And then I guess my second question is, is the requester here? Maybe Miguel, you can speak to that. And then if you do want,
So
we
I,
can hear from you briefly.
so I, if that's Mr. Fagnoli, I only know a voice, I don't know a face. I did speak to him. I let him know about the staff's assessment that he didn't qualify based on the numbers under the statute. He had some other concerns he listed in his recount request in terms of issues with the 50 feet, individuals being within 50 feet of the entrance to the polling place. That was something that I indicated that we would address on election day with the local board and have them talk to the moderator or send the police. That's something that we would have to have resolved that day. It's not something that we could resolve at the meeting today. He also had a question about the Pawtucket early voting results not being posted until the following morning. The reason for that was because the city of Pawtucket delivered to us the 2 sticks, the 2 backup sticks, which were not the primary sticks for the Pawtucket voting equipment. So we could not get the results from those backup sticks. So the next morning, first thing, they delivered the primary sticks to us, USB drives, which we were able to load into our equipment. So they never transmitted their results from Pawtucket City Hall that night. They were unable to transmit, and they delivered the USB drives to us the following morning, which we loaded up, and then those results were produced on our website. And as far as I know, those were the only 2 other issues that were raised in the letter. But Mr. Fagnoli, if he has anything else, I'm not sure.
If you wish to come up, please. I think they're on you.
Thanks. Thank you for giving me a few moments to speak with you this morning.
in the event that, Mr. Fagnoli, you're going to be providing any factual information, you should be sworn in. If you're just here to present argument, you don't need to be sworn in. I just don't know what.
As the candidate, I guess maybe swearing me in because
Okay.
I'll be speaking as witness and candidate.
Okay.
Okay. All right. Could you please raise your right hand? Do you swear to tell the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth? So help you God.
I do.
Okay.
My question with the voter packs, the 5%. Is that 5% off of, as I believe Pat just stated, is that 5% off of Mr. Wilderhain, who is right above me? It states the winning candidate. Well, there's 7 winning candidates for school committee, not 1. So I guess the wording in the statutes is probably should be tied up and loop fixed, because leaving it at 5% of the winning candidate, that honestly, the candidate above me was at 11.9, I was at 8.4. When I'm doing math, that's within 5% of the winning candidate. So that's my position on that. As far as union representatives being well within 50 feet, I did bring that to the attention of the board. To the Board of Elections. I made multiple phone calls on the night of the election after the polls have closed. The early voting, if those sticks were brought here in the morning, the next morning, those results were not posted until almost 2 o'clock the following day, on the Wednesday. which had a lot of people in Pawtucket very concerned about the integrity of the elections that were taking place there in Pawtucket on November 5th in the general election. I brought my concerns to the Board of Canvassers the next morning. I was given not much information other than a broken port was why early voting was not released the night before. So my request, as it was originally, is if I don't qualify for a refeed of the ballots, I would like an explanation as to what the 5% of the winning candidate, where that stands, and I'm still requesting that the PACs be rerun. That would be my request to the board.
Madam Chair, I want to withdraw my motion to deny. I have a question for council. I guess two questions, Ray. One, in your reading of the statute, is it the winning candidate or the winning candidate with the lowest number?
It just says the spread between the winning candidate and the one requesting the recount. It doesn't, this is for a multiple
Correct.
candidate office. I don't have it. I know this was coming up. I don't have the regulation in front of me. Do we have a copy of the reg that I could look over?
So I can explain, what question?
Yeah, I just want to make sure I understand. I'm not familiar with the format of the Pawtucket School Committee vote. Is it vote 7 and Mr. Farnioli came in 8? Is that what I'm?
That is correct.
Correct,
Okay.
yes.
And this, you're looking for the spread between you and the candidate immediately above you?
Well, I'm looking for clarification as to the statute so that moving forward, I think all candidates will know running into a race with multiple 7.
Well, you would only be knocking out the candidate who is immediately above you. Are you saying all candidates who prevailed, you want to calculate on each of
No,
them?
I'm asking the board
Okay.
for your legal as to the perception of what your statute is.
I think what he's trying to say is that this isn't a situation where there's only one winner. There are
7.
7 winners. He's number 8. So the winning candidate, in theory, is the person who finished in 7th, not the person who finished in 1st. Is that your argument?
That is,
Now, secondly,
Excuse me.
ma'am,
Excuse me.
ma'am, she'll recognize you in a second. Secondly, Ray, my other question would be, and this is probably more for the director, then why were the sticks not transmitted to us that evening?
So the clerk from the Pawtucket Board of Canvassers, we didn't receive their transmission. So our procedure is if we don't receive the transmission from the community or for a precinct, we request that they bring them down to us manually. And they did that by about 9:45. The clerk delivered the sticks here. But upon opening the sticks, there were 3 sticks in there. One was for the machine C, the third machine, which was not used for early voting. That was their backup machine. And machine A and B, they pulled the wrong stick. There are 2 drives in the DS200. There's a primary and there's a backup drive. However, the backup drive does not produce any data for us unless they transmit the equipment. So at that point, there was no data on the backup drives. And when we attempted to reach out to the Pawtucket Board of Canvassers, we had their emergency contact numbers, called the cell phones. We only had the cell phone available for the clerk. He did not answer. So at that point, we had no recourse but to wait until the following morning to contact them. And upon them being notified, they brought all of their USB drives down to us for all of their precincts, including the one from the primary drive from the early voting machine. And then we were able to load it into the results.
Okay, so not to go back to my original, so Ray, now the situation that we're in, what, if anything, can we do about that? Because I think that's outrageous that we didn't get the information until the following day. I was on the Board of Canvassers, as many other people here were on the Board of Canvassers on those evenings. And I won't say common, but it's not the first time there's been a transmission issue. I mean, there were transmission issues when we first started this, when we were on dial-up. And someone used to have to physically come to the Board of Elections and drop those sticks off. And to say, I'm just not going to answer my phone after 9:45, I just think it's outrageous during the night of an election. And I don't know what we can do about it. If there's some type of regulation we can look at going forward to.
You
to
could, but you
require
really-
to
you
require
really
the
don't
local
need a-
boards to come in?
You don't need a regulation to at that granular level, you should be able to expect that of your local officials. There's nothing here as far as the information, the data that was provided that was tampered with or that was inaccurate in some way. There was no tampering with it or anything else. It was just a matter of the timing, which is something that you can bring up with each of your local boards. As far as a remedy, after the fact, I can't think of any, except the board could make a statement to the affected local community saying this won't be tolerated again. You need to implement measures that will make sure that people are available, especially on election night.
Okay.
Could you go on our website, print this guide to recounts? Publication.
Commissioner Giacalone?
Oh, thank you. I'm just looking at so there's two issues I know at play here, but it looks like Mr. Wilderhain is the 7th candidate, so the lowest of the winning candidates. So I would assume here, Executive Director, that the 11 point, actually looking at the numbers on the website, I can see that the number of 11%, 11.23 was calculated based on the difference between Mr. Fagnoli and Mr. Wilderhain.
Correct. So in a vote for more than one candidate, the requirements change slightly under the
Yeah.
statute. So in this case, the total votes cast would be the votes for all of the candidates in the contest, plus the write-in votes, plus the undervotes and the overvotes. And when you get a contest total, you divide that number by the number of candidates in the race. In this case, when I divide that total number by the 7 candidates, the total votes cast is 24,183. Mr. Wildenhain received 9,245. Mr. Fagnoli received 6,529. So the statute says that in a contest greater than 20,000 votes cast, which this is because it has 24,183, the requirements for it to qualify for a recount are 0.5% or 150 votes, whichever is less. So in this case, the 0.5%, in this case, it would be 42 votes would need to be the difference, and Mr. Fagnoli it would be 141 votes would be the difference, would be the 0.5%. However, Mr. Fagnoli is trailing by 2,716 votes as the 8th candidate. So he is far outside of the requirement to qualify for either a manual refeed or the 5% requirement, which is for the electronic media rereading. He's far outside of the 5% as well.
And I may not have followed this correctly, but the other candidate listed here is the immediately successful
Correct.
candidate immediately above him. So it's not based upon the top.
It's the number
Okay.
7, he's the number 8.
Okay.
And that seems to be the appropriate calculation, to do
does
it off the
the-
lowest, not the highest we're getting. So
Right.
Just
Right,
for,
the statute
I think
doesn't.
it's a legitimate question. Onto the other, just the early voting, do we have any indication of like the chain of custody of those USB drives from when? Do we get any sort of explanation from the Pawtucket clerk to understand? Because there seems to be obviously a concern. I don't think there's any accusations, but there's a concern about what may have happened in the interim. Do we have a chain of custody? I presume that they probably lock them up in their safe or something like that, you know?
Correct. They did have the drives there. They just unfortunately, they brought us the wrong ones. They had the drives
Yeah.
in the machines, locked in the machines, or in their storage with their other drives. However, they just simply went to the wrong compartment and took the wrong drives out. I mean, the drives are encrypted USB drives. It's not something that you can simply plug into a random computer. They're specialized drives. They're very expensive, actually. So the security on those drives is very robust. It's not something that you can just plug into any computer. They are encrypted with a high level of encryption that can only be read by our EMS equipment.
Thank you.
Yes, Commissioner Connors.
Just to follow along with that, once you made contact with the Pawtucket Board of Canvassers the next day, were they able to explain why they weren't able to transmit the results that night? Did they try and it failed?
So, to my knowledge, based on the facts that we gathered, there was, the technician, as you know, we sent out all of the voting equipment. We sent out the most voting equipment that we have ever sent out. And one of the things that, was done was the early voting machines are idle on election day. So early voting ends the day before election day. So those machines that were being at the early voting sites were used as backups for election day in the event that they needed to be used. Because the machine is essentially just the vessel for the USB drive that is inside it. So we had a polling place in Pawtucket that had a jam, and the technician did not have a spare DS200 available on them. And so what they did was they went to the early voting center and took the USB drive, took the machine that was there, and however that USB drive was taken from that unit and given to the poll workers essentially, so that that machine could be used as a spare in the polling place, which I believe was Slater Mill, the Slater Mill precinct. And so because that happened, the Board of Canvassers, there was a bit of a difference in their normal, because they were not in City Hall, the early voting site was actually at the visitor center. So because this happened there and the Board of Canvasser staff was at City Hall, there was a miscommunication between them and the poll workers at the early voting site as far as of getting that drive and transmitting the equipment. So transmitting the voting equipment, the results. So because of that, they did not realize it was the primary drive that they needed to bring us, because they could have brought us the primary drive that night. They just misidentified which one it was. We do label them. One says backup and one says just the precinct number, and the other one says backup precinct number. However, they grabbed the wrong two drives rather than the primary drives and bringing them to us. And that's why we didn't have the data. As soon as we realized it, we tried to load the sticks. They were, they were not available. We could not reach them. And we don't have any emergency contact information, although we had requested it. We don't have any emergency contact for the board chairman. They had listed the office, the Board of Canvassers office, as their emergency contact number. We only had one telephone number to call, which was the clerk, and we couldn't reach him.
Yes,
I have
Commissioner
a
Schultz.
question, Miguel, how many sticks are involved
With
with the bringing them over the following day? How many sticks did they bring?
590. In the whole state or?
No, in Pawtucket.
Oh, in Pawtucket. So it would be 26.
So 26. So that day, they should have brought the 26.
Well, 26, I can't say 20 because some units had more than one machine. So we're probably looking at a range of like 35 sticks.
So 35 sticks. So on election day, they brought none here. Correct.
No, they're not required to bring them unless there's a transmission. We make that very clear to them from the beginning. If you cannot transmit, you need to bring the sticks to us.
Okay. So there are two sticks, A and B, right? So when is sticks A brought here and when are sticks B brought here? They're supposed to bring here.
So for that early voting site, they had three machines. So machine A, B, and C. A and B, they brought us the backup sticks.
Okay.
For C, they brought us the primary stick, but that stick was not used. it was empty because there was a backup machine. They never needed to use it, fortunately. Once we realized that A and B were the backup drives, we contacted them. They did not answer the phone. We couldn't reach them. And the following morning, we contacted them and they brought us their sticks. They brought us all their sticks, including the early voting ones, which did not transmit. And upon that, we loaded them up into our EMS, because as you know, all the local boards of canvassers are required to bring their sticks, all of their sticks, by 12 o'clock the following day. We load all of those sticks into our EMS system, and those are the results that are actually produced as the final certified results, not the transmitted results from election night. And we compare the results that are taken from those sticks statewide to the results that were transmitted, and we matched them to confirm that there was no alteration of the data in the transmission, during the transmission. So in this case, Pawtucket brought us their A and B sticks the following morning.
So I just want to clarify, of the various machines in Pawtucket, which machines did not transmit, how many machines did not transmit the data on election day?
Only the early voting,
Only one machine,
only two
Only
machines,
two
A and B.
but all the others transmitted their results.
Yes.
Okay, all right. Okay, thanks.
Yes, sir.
So with regard to the early voting, would it be feasible going forward for the early voting information to be conveyed, or at least the sticks be brought
Before.
prior to Tuesday at close of business, since those sticks are not being used on election day, are they?
No, but we don't allow them to total that machine until 8 o'clock. And as I said, we didn't have an issue with 38 of the communities with their early voting. Some take longer than others to come in, but 38, including Block Island, all transmitted. It was only Pawtucket that we had the issue with, where we had the wrong drives brought to us because they did not transmit.
And is there a process as to which gets transmitted to you first?
Nope, they all can come in and whenever they're available. Some machines have more contests, more pages. They take longer to total the results upon closing the polls at 8 o'clock. So they come in all at different
I
times.
mean, so the local polling place, are they required to transmit the early voting first, or is there any order in which they need to transmit them to you?
There is no order. Okay.
Okay, thank you.
Anyone else?
I just one more question, Miguel. When those machines are opened up, the DS200 is opened up, there's a little tape that's produced, and the warden and I guess the moderator have to sign those tapes. And those tapes I guess there are a number of tapes they produce. So when do we get those tapes? That night?
We
Oh,
get them by Friday. So by the return deadline is Friday at noon. So the Friday after, we would get those tapes.
And so use those tapes to check the validity of the results on the sticks.
Correct.
So you saw no discrepancies.
No, and we also asked the local boards of canvassers to check our website compared to what the tapes indicate that they print out, because they keep a copy too.
So all the numbers match. You have no
Yes.
problems with these numbers.
Correct.
So they're accurate numbers.
Yes.
Okay, all right, thank you.
I just want to echo Vice Chair DeSimone's point about, and, to you, Mr. Fargnoli, is I do think we have to make a statement and speak. It is virtually it is unacceptable on election night for you not to be in contact with the clerk. It's an important function for you to be able to get, and the staff here to be able to get what you need to tabulate the results. So I don't know what the recourse is based on what council said, but I do think, it is something we should have a conversation about to ensure that doesn't happen again. That's not what we work so hard to do, to protect the integrity of elections. We all take that role very seriously, and, we need to be assured that our partners in the cities and towns are also taking that very seriously.
Madam Chair, in keeping with
sir.
that, I think that perhaps we should invite the clerk to our next meeting to explain what happened.
I would agree.
I was going to recommend that, given the amount of
I'd certainly be
information
in
Miguel
favor of that,
provided,
Commissioner.
I think that would be advisable so that you can convey whatever concerns you have
Yes,
publicly.
agreed. And so Miguel you will reach out and we'll put that on the next
Certainly.
agenda. Okay. Mr. Fagnoli, do you have anything else? Have you?
At this point, I've stated what my concerns are.
Okay.
I would appeal to the board to please do something to make sure this doesn't happen again. It's not acceptable. There's a lot of work that go into these campaigns, a lot of time, effort, just work in general.
Yeah.
You know, it's just funny that every other city had no problem transmitting their early votes, mail-in votes,
Yeah.
day of polling results, and
Yeah.
Pawtucket didn't.
Yeah.
So they failed us.
Right. No.
This election.
No, and thank you for being here. Thank you for speaking, and we agree. I mean, I am well aware that everyone that's involved in an election, including the candidates, including your volunteers, are all what make democracy and elections possible. So we will address it, and we take it very seriously. Thank you.
So, I'm not just, should you take a motion to deny, or have you already denied?
Yeah, no, we will proceed accordingly. Thank you. Anyone from the board have anything else? We don't need a motion to call the clerk from Pawtucket to our next meeting? No, that can just be handled.
No.
By the staff, okay. Anyone wish to make a motion on this matter?
I'll make a motion to deny the recount request in the Pawtucket School Committee race based on the fact that it was compared to the number 7 candidate of and based on Miguel's explanation.
Yeah, I'll second the motion at this point. I withdrew for the purposes of discussion, but yeah, I'll second the motion at this point.
Okay. Moved and seconded. Any last final discussion? Hearing none, all in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Any opposed? Any abstentions? The motion passes.
Could I request that the Cranston Representative District 15 recount be able to commence now that the board has authorized it to happen? So that way they can get going in the back, because the staff is ready and waiting. So while we cover the other recount requests, if that's possible.
I'm fine with that. If,
So,
right?
Yes,
Yes.
that is perfectly fine. Yep.
okay. So if anyone here from Cranston, Johanna here, we can take you to the back so she can explain the recount process there, and you can commence the Cranston recount for Rep 15. Question?
Madam Chairman, Attorney Robert Murray representing Mr. Pat Hawkins. I just had a question before we start the recount. Could I ask?
Yes, please.
Thank you.
I think that should be on already.
It is.
Okay.
Again, for the record, Robert Murray representing Christopher Paplakis. I just had 2 questions. One, I noticed on the screen, it may just be a mathematical calculation, that the total vote cast is listed as 8,679. The breakdown adds up to 8,660, a discrepancy of 19 votes. And I don't know if that's a human error or.
That would be the write-ins. So in the calculation,
You are correct. Thank you very much. Let me look at the right-in. 19, thank you.
Okay.
I knew there was an answer. My second question, between last night and the night before, the polling place number for candidate Bucci increased from 2532 to 2536, an increase of 4 votes. I know the mail ballots changed, but could I just understand the basis of how the polling place number would change, just so I'm clear on that?
so polling place numbers would change based on 2 factors. It would either be provisional votes or it would be manual counts. And that would be the only reason the polling place numbers would change. And there were no manual counts, to my knowledge, in this contest. The Mail ballots were changed because we were still counting as of yesterday. We finally were able to count the military and overseas, which those were allowed to come in until Tuesday at 4 o'clock. So that's why those numbers may have changed in the mail ballot column as well.
So the increase in the polling place numbers for provisional ballots.
It would be based on the provisional, whatever the difference was with the provisionals, yes.
Thank you for that clarification.
Thank you, of course. Thanks, Miguel.
So moving on to the next contest is Representative District 66. The candidate Jennifer Smith Boylan versus Janine A. Wolf. Janine Wolf is the trailing candidate and the requester. She has she's trailing the winning candidate by 2,459 votes. Based on the staff's calculation, she does not qualify for either a manual refeeding of the ballots or a manual rereading of the electronic media, based on the staff's assessment.
Okay. And is Miss Wolf here?
I'm here to challenge, is this on? Can you hear me?
Yes.
Hello?
Yes, it
Okay.
is.
Should be.
I'm here to challenge the results of my election because procedures followed in my community violated several statutes and principles delineated in Title 17 and 410, and because of fundamental truths about the nature of our elections in this state are being subverted. Elections are an act of citizen agency. They are an exercise of our right both to select and to expel government officials and to constrain the powers of the government we put into place. There are several entries in our state's Title 17 election law and in the instructions provided to poll workers which bear witness to the fact that elections need to be an orderly and public event, conducted in the presence of members of the community as witnesses and officials, and in a way that provides maximum transparency and opportunity for challenge. The word precinct appears 105 times in Title 17, our election statute, and 53 times in Title 410. The certified voting list is the paper representation of our precincts used at our voting locations, and logs of the qualified voters and in the precinct, and permanent record of the stream of voters participating in any given election. The precinct is the building block of our elections per the vast majority of the descriptions of our elections and our voter rolls in both Title 410 and 17. Legal mandates like our Rhode Island General Law 171924 that there be a clear and audible public announcement of the voter's name and address once they are verified as a registered voter in the certified voting list in the precinct where they have appeared to vote, back up this assertion. Loud and clear is how the election worker manual phrases the public announcement. This is for the benefit of the officials, workers, and watchers, no doubt. The voter then, according to the same statute, signs their name next to the printed name on the certified voter list, thus creating a physical record of their participation in the precinct. Yet the town of Barrington, like every other city and town in Rhode Island, because of policies that do not adequately hew to the letter or intent of state law, have recorded votes for voters whose names have not been announced in their precincts, thus denying local oversight of their participation by local watchers and local officials. I'm referring, of course, to all mail ballots included in our 2024 general election results.
Can I, ma'am, I'm so sorry to interrupt you for a moment, but Ray, we did not swear Miss Wolf in, and I'm not sure some of which she's providing is,
If she does get
Okay.
into any kind of facts, you should be sworn in. Are you going to be presenting factual information regarding whether or not people's names were called at precincts or?
Not that granular, but obviously in the case of mail ballots, there are no names ever called at a precinct in front of local witnesses. So,
I mean, so far, it seems like this is argument as
Okay.
opposed to a factual presentation. So I think you're fine just to present your argument as is.
Okay.
backing my concerns. Okay.
yep, I just want to make sure. Sorry, please.
yep.
In addition to this issue, mail ballots are executed in violation of Rhode Island General Law 1719-24-2, which specifically lists the forms of identification that are accepted for any person claiming to be a registered and eligible voter who desires to vote. While disparate treatment is legal for people with disabilities or who are abroad, Rhode Island General Law 1722-4 allows the casting of a ballot by mail for an elector who chooses to vote by mail for any reason. All of Rhode Island's mail ballots, which are mailed to any registered voter who requests one and are accepted and verified based upon a signature verification against a signature on file, are votes for which the voter was required to produce none of the identifying documents that are required of the in-person vote participant in the same election. For these reasons, all of the mail ballots counted in the 2024 general election were accepted while violating 2 Rhode Island statutes that current election law. Additionally, and probably more importantly, is that disparate treatment of voters without legitimate cause is a violation of the Equal Protection Clause of the 14th Amendment of the U.S. Constitution and is also a violation of the Federal Voting Rights Act of 1962. It's a big deal. It is my contention that none of Rhode Island's mail ballots was legally processed and therefore should not be included in the vote totals determining any race outcomes. Additionally, per 1719-25 of Rhode Island General Law, a complete certified voter list must be presented to an election warden at the end of the day's polling, which includes all of the precinct's eligible voters at the time of the election, along with the certified signatures of all who have passed before the precinct's warden and witnesses in that precinct to vote on that day. This list must be delivered by the 2 partisan election officials to the warden to ultimately be forwarded to the local board of canvassers and thereby be available for review by members of the community. Thus, a permanent record is supposed to be created for posterity, establishing the necessary transparency with regard to voter qualification at the time of and participation in the day's election for each individual precinct of the town. This statute is not being followed in the town of Barrington, nor is any static record of eligible voters signed by those who voted in the particular record, in this case, the 2024 general election, available for review by any member of the community who might have an interest in election transparency and oversight going forward. Voting data maintained in an electronic system such as Rhode Island's CVRS system is not static, it is dynamic. It cannot be said to provide an accessible and secure snapshot for review of a precinct's citizens at the time of an election, nor for voter participation. Should a community member choose to review election participation in the days, months, or years following any election, they would be forced into a slow and costly APRA process, which rarely produces the desired result, and in such a case would not be remotely verifiable as a result. Even if these electronic records could produce a date-specific snapshot, which I reiterate they cannot do, such a record would not be in compliance with Rhode Island General Law 1719-25, nor would it supply a reasonable facsimile for the purpose of the voting public. In this way, the Board of Elections has implemented policies in contravention of state law. The illegal ignoring of this statute has irreparably impacted the transparency and thereby the integrity and legitimacy of the 2024 general election. I'll leave you with one more example of how Rhode Island law requires that elections must be in person, witnessed precinct-specific events. Rhode Island General Law 1719-32 describes the required public announcement of the election results for the benefit of the witnesses, watchers, and officials at the precinct's polling location. That read-aloud tape tally is then posted for public viewing on the door of the precinct wherein it was produced. All mail ballots processed away from precincts at the Board of Elections by the Board of Elections employees are in direct violation not only of Rhode Island General Law 1719-24 and 1719-24.2 and 1719-25, but also of the clearly codified implication that elections are to be conducted in a public setting by citizen volunteers with the specific community members bearing witness and being provided the opportunity to watch and listen. The combination of clearly defined and purposely manageably sized precincts into townwide or citywide multiple precinct polling locations for the purpose of early voting defeats a witness's ability to oversee participation in their precinct's elections. Considering the emphasis on the oversight and community witness implied throughout our Title 17 laws, early voting in these combined precinct settings dramatically undermines the transparency of our elections. In Barrington, early voting started on October 16th and was conducted on every weekday through to November 4th during town hall's business hours. The voters who came to vote at the town one early voting location were from all 6 of Barrington's precincts. These two factors, the 14 consecutive days of voting activity and the combining of voters from the far corners of town, rendered nearly impossible any poll workers' attempts to witness the voters of their own community cast votes for their shared precinct. With 6 times as many people passing through Barrington's early voting locations at Town Hall, and the lack of any organized presentation of voters by precinct for verification against a certified voting list, which by definition 410 Rhode Island RICR 20-00-43 is produced by precinct. And the lack of segregated tabulation by precinct, election watchers and officials would be stymied in any effort to observe voters of their respective precincts. This violates the law. I maintain that early voting is against the intention of the laws carefully delineated in Title 17, laws which emphasize a presumption of public witness by the members of a community of voters. Instead of one full day of poll watching wherein all interested citizens could witness all of the voting in their community's precincts, one would have to arrange to be a witness for 15 straight days, including the 13 hours of election day, a Herculean task. This reality completely disables the role of the precinct elector overseer for all precincts that are thrown together in this way. If the General Assembly had intended this dramatic change in the witness ability of our elections, then the statutes would have been changed to indicate such, but they have not. There are 2 statutes in Title 17 that allow a combination of precincts by local board of canvassers. Both are specifically for special elections and primaries. There is no provision in Title 17 that allows for the combination of precincts in a general election. A look at the posted election results in our combined precinct early voting numbers offers a glimpse at the offshoot of these illegally confounded polling efforts. Percentage results for all races I have personally reviewed are vastly skewed from election day polling. 11% differences in one of my precincts compared to the Republican-encouraged early voting percentages to election day polling percentages. And in that same precinct, a 34% return difference between mail ballots and election day polling. But according to Rhode Island law, I can never request to see those mail ballots in order to verify them against the tabulated tape and the ballot scanner reported totals, because none of the recount possibilities on offer from the state of Rhode Island and its Board of Elections allowed citizens or candidates to look at or count actual ballots. Our ballots. Transparency is essential to both elections, confidence, and election integrity. From the standpoint of the voters and from the standpoint of candidates for elected office, we currently have zero transparency with regard to the ballots that are cast in our own election. Because no private personal information is contained on our nameless ballots, privacy cannot rationally be used as a reason for this lack of transparency. The verification of tabulated tapes against the cast ballots in our elections must occur, and it must occur without intervening breaks in the citizens' chain of custody and oversight of those ballots. With all aspects of the state power, money, and control at stake in our elections, state administrators and subcontractors under employment or current contract with the state of Rhode Island cannot be presumed to be impartial actors with regard to the execution of these elections and the custody of our ballots. Citizens' oversight is essential.
Ma'am, are you close to the end?
Yes, I'm sorry. And I have something I'm willing to present if you want to see it. On November 6th, I visited the Barrington Town Hall to review the tally tapes for the early vote totals for my precinct.
Okay, now at
Right,
this
at this
point,
point.
if you're going to be presenting any
Okay,
facts, we should swear you in.
Okay. Just
you please raise your right hand? Go
Can I
ahead.
just ask, Ray, are these facts associated with your request for recount? Or are
Yes.
these facts associated with you telling us that mail ballots and early voting are illegal?
Well, this is this is specifically about my case and what happened and what was not available that was supposed to be.
Okay.
Okay. So I,
Can you raise your right hand? Do you swear to tell the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth, so help you God?
I do.
Okay.
On November 6th, I visited the Barrington Town Hall to review the tally tapes for the early vote totals for my precinct and the 2 other precincts relevant to my District 66 race. I found there to be no tally sheets posted for early voting. Upon request to the town clerk as to the location of the tally sheets from the same, I was told that there were none available and that they could be obtained from the Board of Elections. So not only were there no vote totals from my precinct not posted at my precinct, but they were not available anywhere for review in town. A clear violation of 17-1933A2. So where are these tapes? I would still like to see the tapes. Early voting accounts for more than 50% of the votes that my opponents received. When voting is being done outside of the precinct where elections belong and outside of the community where voters might be recognized by neighbors and other voters, the intention of our election statutes are completely undermined. From the mass intertwining of multiple precincts of voters across 14 days, how could a certified voting list be produced? Were the laws followed? Did we get 6 election list, precinct tallies sheets per day? As the law would imply, the end of the day, you produce a list of the voters and their signatures. And are we producing tabulated tapes for each day of voting, as is described in the laws? I haven't seen any. I think that by law, there should be 84 of them, but I've seen none. It is my intention, it is not my intention to imply malfeasance or malpractice on the part of any individual who followed the training they were given on the way to execute early voting in Barrington. But to point out that when the training provided by the Rhode Island Board of Elections was dutifully followed, it resulted in violations of many laws, including most egregiously, the repeatedly stated requirement that voting be public events witnessed by members of a precinct community members. Community witness is not only an essential part of transparency necessary for integrity and community confidence in the stated outcomes of elections, it is the law. So in January of 2017, Jay Johnson declared that election infrastructure, all the equipment that's used, the poll pads, the CVRS, the tabulators, was declared to be critical infrastructure. And as such, it is federally mandated, as critical infrastructure, it is federally mandated, I apologize, to comply with FISMA, that's the security guidelines, and undergo no less than annual cyber and operational security assessments. APRA's responses that I've gotten in the past and are available, willing to provide them, have indicated that this is not done in Rhode Island. That fact alone, plus the illegal recruitment, witness also evidenced here of unqualified electors into our voting rolls over a period of years under Rhode. I have the documents here, results in a CVRS system that's populated with ineligible voters. Poll pad systems and election vote tabulators that are not federally compliant under FISMA and not operationally secure based on cellular internet connections that are used to transmit ballots, and internet connections where new voters are loaded down into the poll pads when they're started up on election day. The fact that both of those systems are connected to the internet when they're started at the beginning of elections completely nullifies any security test that would have been done on them prior. Okay, once they're connected to the internet, all bets are off. They are accessible and they are vulnerable. All the evidence and documentation of the facts cited are in this bound document, or it can also be accessed on the Rhode Island Supreme Court docket under case SU 2022-0267-MP. The case was filed for writ of mandamus from the Supreme Court. They denied the mandamus, so it was not evaluated, and no decision was made on it. But I have I can leave this if you're interested, or you
Thank
can
you.
access it online. Evidence that the tabulators are not assessed as they should be under federal law. The CBRS is the same, and the poll pads as well.
Thank you, Ms. Wolf. Any board members wish to respond?
I have a question.
Yeah.
The Supreme Court case that you cited, you said they did not give you a writ of mandamus. Did you file that case?
I filed it, and they didn't look at it. They just said, no, they're not gonna, the decision they gave
So you
me.
filed a petition outlining all of this with the Supreme Court of
Yes.
Rhode Island?
Yeah, the reason I have it,
And, no, ma'am, let me
Sorry.
ask the question.
Yes,
So
sorry.
you filed it with the Supreme Court of Rhode Island?
yes, a
The
request for
Supreme-
mandamus.
The Supreme Court of Rhode Island denied your petition.
They did not accept it.
You received a denial of the petition, did you not?
So the request was for a mandamus
Mhm.
to intervene, and they decided that did not grant me that request. So this was never, nothing in here was ever evaluated by the Supreme Court. They refused to hear it.
Right, they denied giving you the writ.
The letter that they sent me just said denied. They didn't elaborate at all.
Correct. They didn't give you the reasons for the denial, but they denied you.
Right, they
Okay.
did,
And so now you're presenting the same case to us.
no, I'm presenting you the evidence that was not reviewed by the Supreme Court. The evidence that, because I have compiled it and documented and the explanations, it's all the evidence that was never reviewed by the Supreme Court.
So the only, I would tell you, and look, I would tell you that the only place that you can make the argument that you made, there are only two places you can make it, either the Supreme Court or the federal court. So
I understand
the
that.
argument that you made
I
from my
understand that.
standpoint.
But
is-
I can't go to the court, the election law in the state of Rhode Island says that any appeal that I have as a candidate has to come first to the Board of Elections. So I'm presenting you with the issues that I see in the system that we are currently running. And, I understand that what you can and can't do. I'm explaining to you why I don't think that the totals that you're seeing should be considered valid.
Okay. Thank you. Anyone else?
All I can say is, I think what Board Member DeSimone mentioned, it makes sense, although I think what the petitioner is saying is that it was in the context of a writ of mandamus, which is a very unusual type of remedy as opposed to some other kind of a writ of cert. But did you file anything here with the board? What you just recited to us, has there been any filing with the board?
I would have had standing because in 2022, I was not a candidate for anything. I was an
No, I'm
observer of
saying,
our
well, you just spent some time,
My statement?
yeah.
No, this is brand new. I just made this last night.
I see. So we are here for recounts, although any impropriety that you have observed as a candidate can be addressed by the board. But what you've presented, with all due respect, in my view at least, is a broad survey of your deficiencies in the entire election system that you have experienced in your view. I suppose the board would at least have to receive such a complaint, but there's nothing pending before us. Do you know what I mean? You
Well,
haven't filed anything with us.
Mhm.
All we have is just
Is
the
there-
request for the
I'm
for
not
the
aware of any
recount.
procedure for filing with you. Like my biggest thing is like you calling this a request for recount and you never will recount a ballot, no matter what. You will never recount a ballot for a candidate. You will
Well,
never, you'll say, I'll read the tapes for you,
Yeah.
but if the machines are not giving you the right numbers, then what good is that to a candidate?
I'm sorry, the ballots are refed.
But you.
You're
but
saying
if-
manually
but if
manually
it's
observed?
refed to the same
I see.
computer that calculated it
Yeah.
before, it's gonna do the same thing. If it's been if there's any.
Yeah, you have a challenge to the law is what you have. Your
I think I have
challenges,
several,
your
yeah.
challenges are to the laws that we're operating under.
And-
Well, ma'am, let
Yep.
me just finish. Let me finish. The law does not provide this board the ability to take a ballot. What you're requesting that each individual ballot be hand counted.
Yes, absolutely.
And that is not
Because
what
that's the only way.
that is not what the law requires. So your
It doesn't
complaint-
prohibit it. The law
You're
does not
com-
prohibit
Well-
counting ballots.
Ma'am, the law sets out a procedure for us.
Yes,
And as many of the commissioners have stated on this board, we are a creature of legislative authority. The
Yes, and
the legislation with regard to counting of ballots is set. We follow that legislation. If
there's no
your-
legislation
if
that
your
prohibits
complaint-
counting ballots.
Ma'am, if your
There's none.
complaint is with the law, you need to file a complaint with a body that can supersede the law. We cannot do that, in
I
my
agree.
opinion.
I
And
understand
I'm only
completely.
I'm
I
only
understand
one
completely.
board member here.
I
No,
understand
I agree.
completely, and I agree with what you're saying. I think the tabulators are not secure, and so they're not fit for purpose. So that is a Board of Elections issue.
That is different, but I mean, with respect to any request for a reviewing an actual physical review of ballots, from time to time, that has been requested in the past. My recollection is back in 2012 in the Tobin case, that very request was made because there was a discrepancy in the final numbers where one of the candidates bounced up and down by one or two. And the petitioner or petitioners made the request that there was a need to actually manually read those ballots by the board to get to a final tabulation. The Supreme Court rejected that and said that the General Assembly has spoken as to how the rereading, the recounts are performed, how the review of ballots is done, and under no circumstances does it call for a review with a set of eyes as to a tabulation. However, if it is kicked out by a voting machine during your review process, the board shall determine voter intent for any discrepancy on a undervote or overvote, anything that's been kicked out by the machine. So that's governed us for well over 10 years.
And we'll be doing that today, right?
You'll be doing that today. Any other discrepancies you see by way of whether we're following cybersecurity or anything else? I mean, I don't think there are any violations at all, but you have a right as a citizen. If you think there is some impropriety with the election system, you may have legal relief as to a type of challenge. But on your specific request regarding ballots, I just want to make clear there is case law that's already addressed that issue.
Right, and,
Thank you,
if
Ray.
you were on the side of the state, you would, of course, argue the law says this is how we do recounts. But there is no prohibition in the law if the board had just wanted to go ahead and do that.
Understood. Thank you. I think Commissioner Jack Voney.
I just I do think that what the witness, I'm sorry, I don't recall your
Janine
name.
Wolf, sorry.
What you've brought up is pretty wide in scope. I don't think a lot of it is under our, it's called into question the entire mail ballot system is not something that we have the power to do. I do think there's certain things in there procedurally, if, for example, not being able to review the voter roll you mentioned, the tape announcement at the end of the night. I don't know if you were there at the precinct. Generally, I know they read it if somebody is actually there, but oftentimes they're not. So those things are certainly things we could look into, and I'd be interested to see, to review after the meeting what you have there to see those things that are relevant to things that are within our purview. Because if there are procedural things that the local boards are not following, we should certainly be aware of that in our
I mean, just the
position of
whole early
oversight.
voting thing and the combining of precincts, how did that, I'm not aware of how that even came about. It's certainly not provided for in the law. The combining precincts is, they have permission to do it in those circumstances, as I said, a special election or a primary. But how we ended up with half of our voting populace funneling through town hall over the course of 14 days, how are the tabulated tapes supposed to be created? Is it the end of the night? They're described as something that happens at the end of the day after voting. We left the tabulators open for 14 days, and then we get one big half of the population tabulated tape at the end. What about the precinct logs where we're supposed to be signing and certified and presented to the warden, and then be stored at the board of the local board of canvassers? That doesn't happen anymore at all. If I went to my town and said, I want to look at the 2020 election, I want to see how many people were registered to vote in this town and how many actually voted on the record. That's not, there's no such thing anymore. It's all in the poll pads, in the CVRS, which, I'm sorry, databases can be multiplied, they can be, you can replace every record in a database in 10 minutes. I have an IT background, 30 years in IT. A database is not a fixed record, okay? We're supposed to be getting fixed records from these elections for the sake of transparency, to be able to go back in history. If I'm running for office and I say I've been a voting citizen of this town for 10 years, someone should be able to go and verify that. And that's what those records do, and I think that's why they're in the law. But all of a sudden, someone said, oh, let's use poll pads instead, and that just went out the window, and the law was never changed. You know, if they changed the law, then I would have nothing to complain about, even though I would think it's wrong, but they didn't even change the law. So there's no permanent record. You know, there's no tapes for the end of the first day of early voting, the end of second day of early voting. How many people came through here? Who witnessed it? Where are the signatures? You know, it's all of the things that we put in place to make these things community events that are transparent and verifiable, and that there's a recorded record of it. Poof, gone. And we're left with this electronic, and yeah, we got it, it's good, that's the right number. We never get to see ballots, we never get to count ballots. From, you know, security has multiple fronts. You know, I've had this conversation with Mr. Nunes before, whether he remembers me or not. But when you say, oh, our elections are secure, the boxes are locked, they have tags, la, la, la. Security from the Board of Elections standpoint is ample, right? You guys have it locked down. But from our standpoint, citizens and candidate standpoint, we have no visibility. We have no way to actually see, were there really 30 ballots in that bin at the end of the night? Or did there suddenly become 45 and we only had 30 people check in? And this tabulated tape says this number. Let's look in the bin and see to verify that it's correct. And if we can do that wherever we want to, whenever we want to, then that gives us confidence that the tabulators are actually just adding. Because they're computers and they can be programmed to do anything. In 15 minutes, I could reprogram a tabulator to give me 25% of my opponent's votes. It's super, super simple math. They're computers, and they're connected to the internet throughout the elections. When you press that button and transmit the totals, that's over the cellular network. So that tabulator has a card in it that connects it to the internet.
Could I just?
Yes,
address-
please.
There's a lot here
Yes.
to address, but I just
Yes.
feel some of the things that if they're in a public forum like this should be addressed immediately, just so we don't have any misinformation out
please.
there. You know, we held an event in early June to answer these exact sort of questions for a couple of hours. I'm happy to do that again as many times as needed, so that might be the proper form to answer a lot of these questions. But in regards to the early voting in this state doesn't actually, it actually still falls under mail ballot. So when you say that early voting is combining
Okay,
precincts.
ma'am, excuse
is
me.
not.
Mega, I think we've listened to you. You can listen to the director respectfully. Nope, thank you.
So it is a form of emergency voting still under the statute, that the statute 1722.2 authorizes that ballot after showing identification to put their ballot into the DS-200 to be tabulated immediately. So in that case, that's actually a form of mail ballots. That's actually more requirements than actually a regular mail ballot, which is based off signature comparison. At early voting, that is a form of mail ballot, emergency mail ballot, that identification is required to cast it into the DS-200. In terms of the Secretary of State every night sends a list of every early voter to any candidate or member of the public who wants to be on that distribution list. So who has voted at every early voting site throughout the 20-day period. So if I want to go and see who voted in Barrington all the way up until day 19 of early voting, I can get that list. You could get on that distribution list and get that from the Secretary of State's office.
That's on a daily basis.
On a daily basis, yes. Every single voter's full name, full address, just their year of birth, and their and additional information that's in the columns on that Excel spreadsheet. In terms of the electronic poll book, the electronic poll books are done through regulation, through the Board of Elections. And the local boards of canvassers are required under statute to post numerous final canvasses. So they have to post a preliminary list of voter registered voters. So before the November 5th general election, a certain number of days, they're required to produce a preliminary list and post it in their offices. They're required to produce a final canvas, which is open to public inspection. So that is not something that's done in secret. The voter list is clearly published and made available by the local boards of canvassers before each election day. I think the items such as reading out the name, that's probably the biggest complaint, honestly, that we get from voters, reading out the name and address at the polling place for privacy concern, but it is in the state law. That's what we show in training. And as Commissioner Jack Boney said, reading out the results, we train the poll workers. State law requires you read out the results in a loud and clear voice, obviously. And we even tell them, honestly, if there's no one there, it doesn't matter, just read them out so all the poll workers can hear it. So there are witnesses to these results. And then we also tell them to post it on the outside door. And that's a law that's been around for 40+ years. It still exists. We do have them print that. They print 5 tapes at the copies. They sign them all at the precinct. As far as early voting, I do agree. I do like, she has a good point about the procedures at early voting. Don't mirror the polling place exactly, because it is not precinct voting. It is mail voting, essentially. So we do have them print 3 reports on the early voting. They total the machine at 8 o'clock on November 5th. They cannot total the machine each day because that is not allowed under state law. However, they are allowed to total it. And I think that the copy of the totals tape for early voting would be very long. I think it should be, it is available if they request it, because they print 3 copies. But I think it's a solid idea to match that requirement at the precinct, to have them post it out on the door outside of City Hall. That's not something that's required in the statute, but certainly we can look at regulatory or something down the road.
Thank you, Director. Thank you.
So, yeah.
Do
Yeah, I was
you,
just gonna say, because the laws for the statutes for mail balloting doesn't match what's happening at
Okay.
the early voting location, but I think I've made my point.
okay, yes, thank you. I'm sorry.
That is Warwick Council 4. I believe that's Joanne Miller, but the board has already authorized your recount to happen. I think you just came in. So it,
Issue and bring before the board. You know what I'm talking about.
I'm sorry.
So if you see in her, as part of her request, she has an issue with the candidate who she faced in the primary.
Okay, just hang on one second. Yep.
There was a vacancy and there was an appointment. However, in my discussions with her, I had indicated that any such objection to candidacy had to be made at that time when that window of opportunity was open, not after the reelection has been conducted. She indicated.
Can you just let the director finish, please? Thank you.
She did tell me that she did call the Secretary of State's office. She was called this office. She was not made aware that any sort of objection could be made. I did indicate to her, that's unfortunate, because we did make a big push during the objections period. We had a one-pager designed in English and Spanish about how to file objections. We have new rules and regulations on filing objections to nomination papers and to candidacy. We have a new form for that, and we put that out on our social media platforms. We distributed it to local boards of canvassers so they could hand it out to candidates when they declared for office. So it was unfortunate that she didn't get that information available to her at the time. But I did indicate to her that it looked like that sort of protest or objection had to be made at the time of that objection period. But I indicated to her she could make that presentation to the board in the event that the board decided otherwise on it. So.
Thank you, Director. Yeah, could you please,
Excuse me.
yeah, Commissioner Connors?
Can we wrap up the
Yeah.
request for recount for District 66?
Yes,
state rep
please.
Before we, thank you.
Yes. On the matter of Representative District 66, do we have a motion?
I'll make a motion to deny the request for recount. Although many of Ms. Wolf's concerns are valid, with elections overall, based on our authority and the statute, my motion is to deny a request for recount.
Thank you.
Second that motion.
Yes,
I would just say that I just want to make sure I know there's people waiting for the other races. I think it's important we get through the actual items on the agenda.
yes.
I don't want to diminish anyone's concerns that they're bringing up, but I think we should at least
Yeah.
get through those first.
So why don't, ma'am, we're going to hold on hearing your comments. You can stay there, but we're going to work our way through the other recounts because there are
There's
people
only 3 left.
waiting to hear, and there are 3 left. Thank you, Commissioner. You could still sit, you could sit there, yeah. So we have a motion and a second to deny the request for recount in Representative District 66. Any further discussion? Hearing none, all in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Any opposed, any abstentions? The motion passes. Okay.
So the next request is for Representative District 21, Marie Hopkins versus James McElroy. Mr. McElroy trails the winning candidate by 85 votes. However, based on the number of votes cast and our calculation, this contest qualifies for a refeeding of the ballots.
Okay. Thank you, Miguel.
I'll move to grant the refeed of the ballots in Rep District 21.
Second.
Moved and seconded. Any further discussion? Hearing none, all in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? Any abstentions? Motion passes. And last.
The next contest is Richmond Town Council,
Oh, we gotta-
Jeffrey L. Dinsmore versus Michael A. Colasante. Mr. Colasante trails the winning candidate by 79 votes. This is a vote for 5. Based on the staff's calculation, Mr. Colasante qualifies for a rereading of the electronic media. I did notify Mr. Colasante of his eligibility for that. He did indicate he would let me know whether or not we would rescind that before the reread tomorrow, which would be tomorrow afternoon. Because I did indicate it would not qualify for a refeeding of ballots. It would simply be a rereading of the media. So he was going to let me know. He did send me an email this morning, which I did provide to you before the meeting, regarding his requests for the other contest, which was Richmond Charahoe School Committee. And as I said, Mr. Colasante is not a candidate for the school committee in Richmond. He's a candidate for the town council. And so it would appear that he does not qualify to request a recount in the town council race, given that he is not a candidate.
That's right. The statute's very clear. It's based upon a request by a candidate, no one else.
And I don't know if he's here.
Mr. Colasante here? No? Oh, okay.
So I think you
Anything
need
else on this
a,
matter? Go ahead, Con.
Just a question from Miguel. Can you just quickly explain to me why this only qualifies for a rereading and not a refeeding?
Yes, so under the statute, in a contest where the voters vote cast, and as I said, in these type of vote for more than one, the vote cast is you add up all of the candidate votes, all of the write-in votes, and all of the under and over votes. In that case, and when then you divide that by the number of candidates. When that's done, the total votes cast in this contest is 4,944. So that puts him in the category of votes cast is less than equal to 5,000 votes. So he's right on the cusp of the next category. So a candidate must trail the winning candidate by 2% or 50 votes, whichever is less. In this case, it would be he's trailing by the 79 votes. And he would have to be trailing by the 49 votes in order to qualify.
So the 49 votes is the 1%.
Correct.
Anyone else?
I'll move to grant a reread in the Richmond Town Council race. And then I think we need to move to deny after that for the Richmond School Committee request.
Is there a formal request on Richmond School Committee?
Besides
the one that-
It's in the original request,
Do
yes.
you have the-
So the
Do you
request
have
is a
this?
two-part request.
But the email you're referring to, is there there was an underlying request for that school
Yes, the
committee race
board,
as
the
well?
board should have copies of that.
Okay.
It looks like on the email, there's a request for this race, the town council race, and then a request for the whole thing. I mean, you should look at it, but it looks to me like it's a.
That would be right. Mr. DeSimone, you'd have a separate vote on that one then.
So I'll move to.
And I just want to clarify, Commissioner Connors. So it's 2% or 50 votes, whichever is less. In this case, 2% is 99 votes. 50 is less than 99, so the difference would have to be 50. And he's trailing by 79. So that is why he's put into the reread, because he is within the 5% for the reread, but he's not within that he'd have to be less than 50 votes. And these contests where you have more than one candidate, it kind of skews compared to when there's only one candidate, because it looks different in terms of sometimes a one candidate contest, the difference will be wider, such as the previous one, which was 85 votes, and it still qualifies. But because this falls under a different criteria in the statute where there's more than one candidate and you're counting the under and the overs, then that kind of makes it skews the calculation more, so that even though this is closer, it doesn't qualify because it's a vote for more than one.
Thanks, Miguel. Commissioner Connor.
I'll second the motion.
Okay. Moved and seconded. Any final discussion? Hearing none. All in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Any opposed? Any abstentions? Motion passes.
And with regard to the request, Madam Chair, I will move to deny the request with respect to the Richmond School Committee.
Second.
Commissioner Connors, did you have a
That's just
question?
the denial, motion for denial, is that just based on standing?
Correct.
Okay.
And council's representation that it requires the candidate.
The candidate, him or herself, that's right.
Right.
So it would be a motion based upon standing to make the request.
Great. Moved and seconded. All in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Any opposed? Any abstentions? Motion passes. And Miguel, before we move to in the Warwick Senate District 29, we still have Barrington Town Council, correct? Do you want,
Yes.
what
Is-
order do you want to take that in?
If Mr. Hughes is here, perhaps he can.
Okay.
So Mr. Hughes, he's probably not aware that, if you want to just have me give a brief summary.
Yeah, please.
of This, all right.
Thank
so-
you.
How are you? Hello. So Barrington Town Council, up until yesterday, Mr. Hughes was the third highest vote getter in the Barrington Town Council contest. However, after tabulating the military and overseas ballots and 4 manual count ballots, Mr. Hughes dropped to number 4 in the contest. And in the requester for the recount was now number 3. So the requester, Jordan M. Janasek, had requested the recount by the deadline when she was the 4th highest vote getter. So she was the trailing candidate up until yesterday. And then yesterday, she became the 3rd highest vote getter, meaning she was now the winning candidate, and Mr. Hughes was now the trailing candidate. I did reach out to both Ms. Janasek and Mr. Hughes. Mr. Hughes is here. Mr. Hughes is probably not aware that Ms. Janasek did email me just before the meeting, which I distributed to the board, that she does not want to rescind her recount request, even though she is the winner, that she believes in a free and fair election, and she would like the recount to proceed. So that's the latest information that we have on this race.
That's all I was gonna ask.
Yeah, I assume you would have requested.
Yeah, awesome.
Okay,
Okay, thank you guys.
thank you.
Thank you.
So just based on those numbers, there is, the recount, she's not rescinding her request, and she qualifies for the manual refeed based on the percentage that's before you today.
Okay,
And I think it's the fairest outcome to do it that way. And Miguel and I spoke this morning when I learned of the circumstance, although what we spoke about was different. We did on at least one aspect, but there is no statute that speaks to this. The statute on recounts requires a person to be trailing, to be making the request. And there's a 7-day rule from the date of the election. Now, maybe one thing is on 17-1936 that talks about tabulation of town results. Are those results tabulated at the local level the day following an election, or is it all through our own website?
All through our website, all through our systems.
So I mean, maybe that's, if it ever came to a reason to make this, to grant this request, perhaps that would be the basis, because under 17-1936, in a local election, it does call for the local board meeting on the day following the election to tabulate the town results. So maybe arguably the 7 days does not ripen because that was not done, although this might be an artifact. This may no longer take place. We're just beyond that statutory scheme, and this is now outdated. So I wish I could say there's an easy answer. I can say what the most fair answer would be, but I'm having a little trouble finding the statutory underpinnings to allow someone to seek a request beyond the 7-day limit when they haven't done so in that time frame. As I said to Miguel this morning, in this instance, you're not dealing with a primary. There's no consequence of that not being met, but I just think we have to be careful when we go beyond anything that we can point to in the statutes themselves. And here I can't point to anything that would allow this kind of a shift 7 days after. The most prudent way for any candidate to handle this is if you are in a close election, make the request and then withdraw it. But that wasn't done here. It was done by one candidate, not both.
you can come back up. The commissioner has a question. Yeah.
So, Council, Ray, do we have the authority to order a recount if there's no request made?
All I can say is that a request has been made by one of the candidates. It's just not the strongest basis to rely upon that because they're no longer the trailing candidate. And under 1937.1, it does speak about making the request within that time frame as a trailing candidate. Here you have a very unusual circumstance where
'cause
he hasn't even
wouldn't know
learned.
he was trailing.
I guess
Yes.
my
Leading
question
up
is,
until last night.
That's right.
does the
Nobody
bo-
knew.
I guess, does the board on its own authority have the ability to order a recount?
I'm going to say in this circumstance that the better approach is to say yes, number one. Number two, the board always has plenary powers to oversee any aspect of the election. So in this case, you'll be relying upon that power as well.
So I guess my question is it more prudent for us to make a motion to approve the pending request, even though it's not by a trailing candidate, or to make a motion on our own volition to have a recount?
The most prudent thing would probably be do it on both bases.
Okay,
And I don't think anyone here is going to challenge it. We have the person who was, who is now prevailing,
Right.
not opposing this and actually supporting it. So it's more of me thinking about what we're setting ourselves up for in other
Yeah.
elections, but it's a shortfall in the statutory framework. No one is expecting there not to be final results within that 7 days. It's a problem. And maybe that's for the General Assembly to address in the
maybe we
future.
should present something in the
Yes.
next legislative packet.
Yes.
7 days from the election or 7 days following the final tabulation, whichever is later, so that people's rights are not
Yeah.
prejudiced. Sorry for that long-winded thing, but it's,
Yeah, as long as the recount,
it's-
I mean, it's
yeah.
fine.
Yeah,
I'm
understood.
fine either way, obviously, but as long as the recount happens, whether I request it or she requests it, that's fine. So,
Okay.
All right,
Thank you.
awesome. Thank you, guys.
Thank
Good
you.
day.
You too.
I just have a quick
Sure.
question. Was she, at the time she filed the request, and this is, I guess, a question for Miguel, she was the trailing candidate?
Correct.
That is correct.
All right.
but she's lost standing.
Yeah, okay.
She's lost standing.
Okay.
She's just like Mr. Colasanti. The only person who can make the request is the losing candidate.
Yeah.
That's it.
I do think that's
So-
something
so-
we should
so
look at.
He would have been prohibited from making
Yeah.
a request.
He could have made it.
He could not have made
I
it.
could not have made it.
Yeah.
Well, he didn't know what the final results were.
Yeah, but it was outside of that 7 days, and like,
You'd have to make the request in the 7 days.
but I couldn't because I was leading.
There is nobody leading until you get the final tabulation, which did not occur until, 10 o'clock last night?
Right. But how would you make it, well, at that point I was leading, right? So I couldn't make the request.
You could have, what I'm saying is that there are candidates who actually make the request in close elections because the tabulation is not finalized. You don't know if you'll be ahead by 1 vote, 100 votes, you just don't know.
So it's a,
it's a
shortfall in
It's a
the,
shortcoming
Yeah, that
in the
seems-
statute.
yeah.
It's confusing.
We
and
do-
Somebody's gonna have to
yeah.
explain that. Yeah, that's.
No,
that's fine, yeah.
My head's going too.
I was leading, yeah.
But I think to the vice chair's point, it is something we put forth a legislative package every year. The season is approaching that we should definitely look at based on this example, because we could have more.
Hey, if I don't win, I get to change the law.
Okay,
Awesome.
thank you. You better just hang on for a sec, because who knows what else could come
Man, I'm
up.
trying to get back to work.
All right, so do we have a motion on the table? I can't recall if you've,
I don't
did you
think
make a
someone
motion?
moved
Did
yet.
anyone?
I didn't. I will,
Okay. Or
if
someone
anybody else wants to,
can.
but I'd like to approve the request for a recount, both on the request made by the then trailing candidate in the Barrington Town Council race and under our plenary powers as a board to request a recount in these unusual circumstances.
Is that, that's good.
That's,
Okay.
yep.
Did you have something else? Oh, you had your hand, okay.
No.
Moved and seconded. All in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? Any abstentions? The ayes have it. Motion passes.
I was informed that the recount's tomorrow at 11. Is it today?
Tomorrow.
Tomorrow is still 11?
Yes.
Okay,
Yes.
awesome. Thank you.
Have a good day.
Thanks.
Okay, I think we're through with the
Yes,
list, and
this
now,
is council.
Ms. Miller? Okay.
My name is Joan Miller. I ran as an independent for Ward 4.
Can you just tip the microphone down a little bit?
I ran as an independent for Ward 4, Warwick City Council. It was brought to my attention by legal counsel for the Republican Party that my opponent, Mr. DeLuise, might have been placed on the printed ballot illegally. And I just want to say that maybe a time frame for filing an objection to like the nomination papers where you have to sign things was over. But I did call this body and the Secretary of State and asked what could I do when I received that email. And nobody could give me an answer. Also, I wanted to say that maybe the time frame. I don't see any time frames on any of the laws that I pulled up online for filing an objection to his being placed on the printed ballot. And lastly, I just want to say that I don't think there should be a time frame if laws were not followed from the beginning regarding placing him on the printed ballot. And I'd like to call your attention to what, would you like a copy, sir, of the laws that they pulled up for me? Do you want me to-
When you're finished, we'll take whatever you wish to present. Is it, what you're reading from right now, has this already been presented to the board?
No,
Has
it hasn't.
anything been-
I came down and I spoke with Mr. Nunes. He was very kind to me. He said he would look into it too, but I would like to file an official filing with you, because I'm also going to approach the Secretary of State and the Attorney General.
If something does get filed, I think the board could consider it.
I appreciate
Once
that.
it's been filed. It is difficult for the
this
board
point,
to
yeah.
consider anything when it has not seen or heard anything that you're about to say. So the process would be to file it, and then if there's a challenge to a particular race, the board would have to make a determination on that. But right now, there's nothing before us. There's nothing on the agenda that
It's not like I haven't tried.
So,
It'll be the
to get
same.
this,
No, no,
to
I-
get this filed?
Yes.
so you would suggest, though, that we hold on hearing Ms.
I
Miller's?
cannot, I mean, obviously, whenever we have an emergency, we can bypass our normal notification process, but here I don't see
Time
why
is-
we have potentially someone who's at the other end of this ballot who may be interested in
Yeah.
being present. So I would not want to have the board hear something that would be one-sided. And I
understand that.
do suggest that you file
Mhm.
whatever you wish to file, and let the board staff best address how to get it before the board.
Okay, may I request an emergency too, because time is of the essence? And how do I do that when I file this?
Well,
Is there any special procedure
Ray, I
I
have a
must
question.
follow?
Is this something we can address before certification?
I don't
that-
even know what it is. How, I
mean,
can't
if
answer.
she's- I'm guessing she's objecting to the candidate being on the ballot. So if she's going to make that formal objection, could we do it at certification or just prior to certification?
I'd
have
like to
notice-
see-
Notice to the other side
Right.
and have them come in. and-
You could do that. I would like to, I don't know what the basis is, so before I
That
say
way
any
everybody
more
get-
than that,
Yeah.
I would
that way
say
everybody gets
yes.
a chance to look at it.
yes.
Well,
Are you challenging the placement of someone on the ballot?
On the printed ballot. And can I just read the law to you and then you can throw me out?
No, I
Okay.
don't want to throw you out.
No,
What
no,
we
I'm
want,
just kidding.
what we want to do is, we
Yes.
want to give you a hearing on your objection. The
Yeah.
problem is, as council stated, it's not before us because it's not
Correct.
on our agenda. I'm trying to get you to a point where it's put on our agenda
Yeah.
and it's still a situation where the question's not moved. So
Right.
if it's a situation where you're saying that someone should not have been on the ballot, you may have some time issues, but at least council would be able to look at it, and the rest of us would be able to look at it. And also whoever is on whoever the opposition is that you're trying to remove or saying that they're there illegally would also have the opportunity to address us.
Yes, well, that's what I just asked you. What would that procedure be, that I could file that in emergency way? And also, counsel said he wasn't sure what he's even looking at, so that's why I wanted to read it to you.
Okay, sure.
All right. This is in the email that I received. Said, we would direct your attention to Rhode Island General Laws 1715-38. Under this provision, Mr. Mike Penta was clearly a qualified nominee for Ward 4 City Council. He was a Democrat, registered as a Democrat candidate, for City Council, and he clearly has removed himself from the jurisdiction. Pursuant to this provision, the appropriate Democratic committee has the right to file the name of a new nominee within 3 days. It is our understanding that this did occur in a timely manner. Once it has been confirmed that the new candidate would have been eligible on the dates as required by other requisite laws, that candidate is now eligible to hold the office if elected. We take no issue with any of those points in regard to the newly elected candidate. However, appearing on the ballot is a separate matter. According to this provision, the person so named shall be the nominee of the party for the office, and if in the case of the death of a nominee time will permit, the Secretary of State shall place the name of the nominee upon the election ballot. The provision only provides for adding a replacement candidate to the ballot in the case of the death of the nominee. Requirements for appearing on the ballot are numerous and are contained in many provisions of Title 17. This one provision creates an exception for death only, and in fact, this provision actually limits that exception, noting that if the death occurs after the third day, or if the Secretary of State determines that time prevents such action, then the name of the replacement shall not appear on the ballot.
So you do have an objection to the person, the other person
Yes,
on
sir,
the
I do.
ballot? Okay. So Miguel, let me just ask, is this, we're going to have a meeting for certification, is that correct? To certify the election.
Mm-hmm.
So prior to that, in a legal sense, nobody is certified, correct?
No.
Okay. So is this something that we could have her present and then notify everybody that might have an interest and then hear it just before our certification hearing that day?
I believe that's a question Ray can answer, but
Okay. I mean,
we could add it
does
to the
that make
agenda
sense or
before that.
Not, Ray?
What did Miguel just say? You can do it before that?
Well, if it's done before certification, because next Monday we have to certify the recount results, and we have to then certify the election results. So if it's done before that point, then before the agenda item for certification of the entire results, I don't see why not.
I can't either. I mean, of course, the big question looming over this entire thing is timing, whether or not this is entirely out of time, but I'm not,
Right, and
I can't give an opinion on that. We'd
I
have to see. We'll review whatever you file. Opposing party or parties can comment as well, and then we can hear that before you do the certification.
And I just want to point out, it wasn't an agenda item specifically because she didn't include that in her letter. And I know we had some conversations and about the timing of this, but it wasn't including in her formal request. So that's why it wasn't put on the agenda. It was just the recount, which you've already authorized.
so if we take it as a formal request now, and we can post it for, you said Monday?
Well, if you want it the same day as the certification, it would have to be Thursday, but I could post another meeting certainly before that if need be.
I mean, that's again up to the board.
I think the best thing is let the petitioner file and let's take it from there. I mean, let's see what you do file. And then Miguel can put it on whatever agenda that we have coming up for consideration.
I just want you to be aware of the fact, it's not a moot question. You can file it. It may be a case where council says to us, you're out of time, but you could certainly file whatever you want. And we will get it on one of our agendas so that you can be heard.
Thank you, I appreciate it.
Thank you.
And by filing, just front desk.
Yeah. And be sure in your papers,
Yes,
ma'am,
front desk.
be sure in your papers you explain very thoroughly why you waited until now to raise these issues.
And your recount should be happening very shortly in the back. So.
So do we need any sort of motion to close out this agenda, the number 2, for
Number
moving on
2?
to number 3?
Is that the one on her recount?
Yeah,
Because you've already.
we voted on
you've already
each
voted on
one.
that, so
We
you're set. There's
exhausted.
nothing else.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right, great.
Yep. Let's see what she files and then you can take a vote on that for whatever day
Okay.
we have on for that hearing.
Okay. Should we, okay, then we'll move to agenda item number 3. The board may hear and vote upon an appeal of a decision by the Cranston Board of Canvassers and motion for stay filed on behalf of Christopher Paplauskis relating to provisional ballots cast in the House District 15 race.
And I think that the way we left that, if I'm not mistaken, that may be withdrawn depending on what comes of the recount that's taking place right now. So they're,
Are they in the middle of that now?
Yes.
yeah. So
Do you
when
wanna-
that's done, we'll know if they're going to even pursue this.
So we should hold on this
Yeah.
item? Okay.
Correct.
Now, I
Unless
don't
you-
know, Miguel, how long do you think that will take? Because I don't want to keep the board waiting, but might it be a,
Might be another hour, an hour
okay.
or so, I would imagine.
Could it be, and when is the board meeting again on this?
Thursday.
That's the next one.
And again, this involves four, or really three potential provisional ballots. And the difference now is, I believe, 31 is the difference in the recount. So, well, it's actually 22 now after yesterday. So it may be a moot point at that point after the recount.
So I don't know what exactly you would like, what we should do then. If it may get withdrawn, I'm not sure it's beneficial to hear something that may become moot. But by the same token, I don't think we want to keep the board here for an hour. Wait, is there anything else the board has to do between, this is it, right?
This and assisting with manually reviewing some of the ballots that need to be manually tallied. I believe the council may have gone to I know I see Nick there. I don't know if council is here, Mr. Murray, if he's.
Yes, he was.
Yeah, they went
He
to
did,
the recount.
yeah. He presented
Um,
earlier.
So if we want to bring them back to decide what they want to do with this, can certainly do that. I can move on to the next agenda item for now, and we can get through these deficient ballots.
Okay. Okay, so while we wait, we'll move to agenda item number 4. The board will review and vote on deficient ballots for the general election of Tuesday, November 5th, 2024, that have not been cured by voters. Director?
Honorable members of the boards, specifically, we're going to be reviewing any deficient ballots that are involved in the recount contest, either today or tomorrow. We do have a substantial number of 100 additional ones that would need to be reviewed next week. But at this time, we prioritize those that would affect that are in the recount contest. So what we'll do is we'll go through each of these signatures. These are voters who, as part of our signature verification process, as you know, we have a pair of election officials review the signatures on the ballot, and they will compare that to the signature, most recent signature in the voter registration database. If that does not match, or they don't feel that reasonably matches, they will flag it. That will then have to be reviewed by another pair of election officials who do some more research on it. They actually look in to see previous signatures that the voter might have on record and over the years, or previous registration cards. If they don't find a reasonable match, then that voter is then mailed a letter indicating to them that they have 7 days to cure their ballot in order for it to be counted. And in this case, these are the voters in these recount contests who did not respond to that notice and whose ballot will be voided unless the board agrees that the signatures can be accepted here at the meeting today. So if you're ready, we can go through.
Yes.
So the first voter is Sebastian James Bartolato from Cranston. You can see his signature on his envelope at the left and his most recent and only signature in the central voter registration system.
So we have to take, you're suggesting we take a vote on each
Each
one to
one.
either
That is the
accept or
practice,
reject?
yes.
Okay. I'll make a motion to reject this.
Second.
Moved and seconded to reject the signature. All in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Any opposed? Abstentions? The ayes have it.
The next signature is from Paul E. Dentremont in Warwick. On the left is their ballot signature, on the right is their signature in the central voter registration system.
And, never mind.
And Miguel, just as a point of clarification, we do not have a copy of their signature on the application.
The only one that we refer to in our mail ballot certification is the signature in the central voter registration system, which is on the right.
Okay. Have any of these signatures or requests been submitted to the local board of canvassers to see, check against their wet signatures on file?
When the local board approves the ballot to be issued by the Secretary of State, they will compare the signature on their application to that signature that's on the right. So they authorize the front end of the process, and then we authorize the back end with counting the ballot.
So the signature on the right matches the signature, the wet signature on file at the board of canvassers.
This is the only signature that we have for this voter, and it appears it's a signature of the Department of Motor Vehicles on the electronic pad. There is no wet signature for it. There's the person registered at the DMV.
Oh, I see. Okay. Well, move to deny. Reject the ballot.
Move to reject. Do we have a second?
Second.
Any other comment, discussion? Hearing none, all in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Any opposed?
No.
Oh, sorry.
Sorry.
Thank you. And the ayes have it with four ayes and one no from Commissioner Jack Boney. Next.
The next signature is for Eva H. Furtado in Warwick. On the left is her ballot signature. On the right is her signature on file.
While you're reviewing that, I think the attorney or people who are involved in the recount, is that still going on while we're here? For the,
I believe so, yes.
so they should go back, right? Because you're doing this, another 20 of these?
We've already done the one Cranston one, so we do have about 10 more to go, yes.
Can we do that? Can we hold here on this and here? From them now? Is that what you're
Stop this
suggesting?
process, or I just want to make sure that
Yeah,
they're able
they can
to,
watch.
are you missing something going on with the
Yeah,
recount?
yeah.
I don't think we should do that if we can avoid that. So
Agreed.
either they should go back or we should hear them.
Agreed. Yeah, I think you can, please come up. Thank you, Ray.
Yeah.
Yes.
If the question is on the appeal filed by candidate Kaplakis, my discussion with your counsel was that depending on the result of the recount, may decide whether or not I want to proceed with the appeal. So I don't know if the board wants to take that into consideration in your planning. But I don't want to interfere with the board's process. But if at the end of the recount, the results don't change, I probably will not actually go forward on the appeal. So.
Right, it's just, and that is exactly what I conveyed to the board. It's just that it looks like we might have an hour or so of the board not having anything before it. So we're thinking that you're about an hour out with your recount before that's completed.
At the rate we're going, I think it's going to be a little longer. I'll do whatever the board wants. But,
Yeah.
You want to continue to another date? Is that what your suggestion is, right?
What's that? I didn't hear you.
I said, are you suggesting that we continue it to another date?
Are we able to do that? We don't have anything set until next Thursday though, right?
It would be similar to the last matter. If you wanted to put it on the agenda before the certification of the results, we could do that.
So we could call another meeting.
Yeah.
In the event that council wants to have that motion heard, we could call another meeting, because if he may not want to have motion heard.
That's, if the board is able to do that, that's fine.
It's fine.
It's up to the chair, I mean, it's up to you.
No, I mean, I'm fine with that. If, we get through this, figure it out, you can let Miguel know one way or the other, and then we would call a meeting to hear the appeal if that's what you wish to do.
Okay.
Okay.
It's fine.
Thank you.
Thank you.
So I don't think we had a motion or vote on the Eva Furtado yet.
Not seeing much
I'll move to-
similarities.
I'll move to reject.
Second.
He has a motion to reject, he made a motion to reject. You seconded? All right, moved and seconded to reject the signature. All in favor signify by saying aye. Any opposed? The ayes have it.
Next, we have Ashley Burgard in Woonsocket. On the left is her ballot signature, on the right is her signature on file.
Are these wet signatures or poll pad or a combination?
This appears to be a Department of Motor Vehicle signature.
On the right, but the left is a wet signature?
Yes, left is a wet signature.
Madam Chair, can I
It's-
just ask
yes,
one additional
please.
question of
Yes.
the director? So, Miguel, just to reiterate, all of these people received notice
Yes,
of
They
their
received notice.
deficient ballot. And the notice
Correct.
basically says your ballot is deficient.
correct. And if they signed up for our ballot track service, they would receive a text message, phone call, or an email as well.
Basically telling them that the ballot was in question.
Exactly.
See, Miguel, as a follow-up, after giving them notice, are they required to come here before the board, or can they communicate to the board by email or telephone call to say that they signed the ballot?
No, it does need to be an actual signature, a wet signature.
They would actually have to come
And
appear,
deliver the notice to us signed or mail it to us by the deadline.
so either an affidavit they would sign, or would they sign a specific form that the board?
It's a
has produced?
specific form that has their name on it, their address, and it just indicates that their ballot was not accepted due to a signature not being present, which we don't have any of those in this case. Everyone here, every ballot being reviewed has a signature. There was no missing signatures from any voters. Or they would just be notified that their signature did not match.
So when you send that stuff out by email, do you include a copy of that particular form?
They can access that form through the central voter registration system. They log in and they can print a copy there, or they can go to the local board of canvassers and they can get a copy printed there, and then we mail them a copy as well.
Only reason I bring up all this, because some of these signatures appear to be signed by elderly. They might not, have access to all that, or even understand the situation. And I know that look at these digital signatures from the motor vehicles have always been a problem, because they don't, the pixels are too big or whatever. They don't quite capture the proper signature. And perhaps over the next 2 years, before the next election, local board of canvassers can download or the wet signatures, copies of the wet signatures on file, whatever they have, so that we have more signatures to look at when we compare these. Is that would that be an acceptable method of resolving these issues?
I like where you're going with this because, but the signatures that they have is what they have. So if a voter if you go to the Department of Motor Vehicles and next week and you sign the pad, that will be your signature. If now I'm assuming for you, we do have, numerous signatures on file, wet signatures, because you've probably registered to vote on a paper form various times. So we would have your wet signature, even if it was 10 years old, 12 years old. But more recently, we probably have your Department of Motor Vehicles signature. Because remember, when you go to the Department of Motor Vehicles, you're not asked anymore if you want to register to vote. You're automatically registered unless you opt out. So any transaction you do at the Department of Motor Vehicles, unless you opt out, your signature is going to be captured for your voter registration purposes. So more and more, that's why you're seeing, as we present these to you, you're seeing more and more digital signatures. Now, what I do, and I do agree with you that because we're seeing this, I think we need to have more of an outreach with the Department of Motor Vehicles to improve these qualities of these signatures. We have had discussions with the administrator there even a few months ago. They are doing an upgrade to their systems, and they are going to have higher resolution signatures so that we can actually get a better picture of the signature when it comes in. So it's clearer to us and clearer to the board when you review it. So we are very interested in that, getting a higher DPI signature to be able to review.
The problem is that, as I see it, people with a stylus may sign it like this.
Yeah.
It's where, these are apples and oranges. I mean,
Yeah. Yeah, this
it's
is,
hard to compare. I mean, and there are no other electronic signatures that we can compare them to, like from this last one to a preceding one. It's always the wet versus the poll pad. There's no easy solution, but that is the problem when you're comparing these.
Now, my thought with that as well is to, again, reach out to the DMV, and our plan is to convey to their tellers and their clerks that this is your voter signature. So either have something on the pad or something to make it much more clear that this signature is not only going to appear on your driver's license, because this is actually the signature that appears on your, very small on your driver's license, but that it is going to be used for voting purposes, so that people are more cognizant to not do initials, just do their signature as they sign it, so that it's, if they do apply for a mail ballot, it's something that we have a better, higher quality signature to look at than what we do in these cases. But I agree with you, these digital signatures are something that I think we have to take some steps to improve them going forward.
Been having these problems for a number of years,
Exactly.
because when you go to the Board of, when you go to the Registry of Motor Vehicles, people use the swoosh.
Yes.
That's my signature, and the clerk doesn't say, sign the right way.
right.
We don't like that signature. No, they'll accept whatever the person put down.
Mhm.
Just like I see over here, one of a person made like a dove or a bird
Mm.
as a signature, which, doesn't make sense at all. But apparently the person sort of, that's that person's, I guess, rebellion, assigning the digital pad. But it puts us in a difficult position of trying to match these signatures.
It really does. So Miguel, just to completely agreed, so maybe coming out of going into for other elections, we can continue to have discussions that I know you already have been having with administrators at the DMV to improve as much as possible.
Yes.
Okay.
Make a motion to reject this.
Second.
Motion to reject and seconded. All in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? The ayes have it.
The next signature we have to review is Carrie Reed Hederick Barrington. The left is her ballot signature, on the right is her signature on file.
Motion to reject. Second.
Moved and seconded to reject. Any comments? Hearing none, all in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? The ayes have it.
Next signature is Catherine Quinn Waldorf from Barrington. Ballot signature on the left and her signature on file on the right.
Motion to reject.
Second.
Moved and seconded to reject. All in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? The ayes have it.
Next signature is Patrick Richard Cronin from Barrington. Ballot signature on the left, and we have two signatures for Mr. Cronin on the right. They both appear to be digital signatures from the DMV. Nope, the second one, sorry, the bottom one appears to be a wet signature, and the top one appears to be a digital signature.
So on the right-hand side, Miguel, the bottom one you think is a
Wet
is a
signature,
wet
yes.
signature.
And they're identical.
Motion to reject?
Second.
Moved and seconded to reject. All in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? The ayes have it.
The next signature is Liam Byron Kelly, Barrington. Ballot signature on the left, the digital signature on the right.
Motion to reject.
Second that?
Moved and seconded to reject. All in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Any opposed? The ayes have it.
Next signature is Harrison Walker Friel from Barrington. The ballot signature is on the left, and Mr. Friel's signature is on the right, appears to be a digital signature.
Just this is an example. This is, so the one on the right was through the DMV
Correct.
and it's printed so that the point that Commissioner Scholl's made of just them, working
Mhm.
working with us to not, to avoid this as much as possible because it's just unfortunate. And I know, again, to restate that the Board of Elections team does due diligence to reach out to these voters so that they know their, ballots are deficient, but on the front end, definitely needs some improvements.
Move to reject.
Motion to reject,
Second.
seconded. All in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Any opposed? The ayes have it.
The next signature is Emmanuel Leonard Max Alcindor from Barrington. Ballot signature on the left, and we have two signatures for him. They both appear to be digital signatures on the right.
I'll make a motion to reject. The digital signatures seem to match, but the printed name, it's possible to match.
Moved and seconded to reject. All in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? The ayes have it.
Next signature is for Elijah P. Davis, Barrington. Ballot signature on the left, digital signature on the right.
This is definitely my favorite digital signature.
I'll never get the image of a bird out of my head. Ay, ay.
Move to reject.
Move to reject. Do I have a second?
Second.
Moved and seconded to reject. All in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? The ayes have it.
The next voter is Theodore Henry Kuhn, Barrington. Ballot signature on the left, digital signature apparently on the right.
No, I can see towards the, like the C.
I move to accept.
Second.
Moved and seconded to accept the signature.
I'm sorry, you said you see something?
Yeah.
Tell me what you see here.
See, right, see how that goes up and down and then,
Oh, yeah, I guess I see what you're saying. I'm not sure.
I know,
It's tough. It's tough.
such a fun process.
Yeah.
Okay, so there's a motion and a second to accept the signature. All in favor signify by saying aye.
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 No.
Opposed? Two opposed. Three in favor. The motion passes.
The next signature is for, that was to accept it.
3-2.
Accepted 3-2.
Lily Ann Swintack, Barrington, ballot signature on the left, and it appears to be digital signature on the right.
Move to reject.
Second.
Moved and seconded to reject. All in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? The ayes have it. Last but not least.
Final signature is for Kristen E. Brown from Barrington, ballot signature on the left, and appears to be digital signature on the right.
Motion to reject.
Second.
Moved and seconded to reject. All in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? The ayes have it. That's it for these. Okay. Moving on to agenda item number 5. The board may discuss and vote to select the contest subject for the risk limiting audit to be held on November 19th or 20th, 2024.
Good morning, members of the board. As you know, Rhode Island General Law 17-1934 requires the Board of Elections to conduct a risk-limiting audit after each general election, as well as the presidential preference primary, which we conducted in April. We began planning for this audit well before Election Day, as every ballot that is cast at the polls or during early voting or by mail must be properly batched up into a manifest, batched up and sealed by poll workers, local boards of canvassers, and our staff. And conducting the audit requires use of our full-time staff, seasonal staff, and board members from the local boards of canvassers. We continue to work with the organization Verified Voting, on developing the different technical aspects of the audit. Now, one of the first steps the board takes, or the staff takes as well in conducting the audit, is to select the contest. We use several factors to make that determination of which contest to recommend to the board to be audited, such as the high level of interest in the contest, expected closeness of the contest, and the feasibility of completing the audit before any deadlines. With that in mind, the staff recommends the conduct of an audit of the presidential contest due to the high interest in that contest. In a change from previous years, the staff is also requesting to conduct an additional audit on House District 28 in Coventry. The ability to conduct a risk-limiting audit on General Assembly contests was recently enabled by legislation sponsored by Common Cause that was passed by the General Assembly this past legislative session. This would be the first time that we would be conducting an audit on 2 contests during an RLA. The risk limit for both audits would be 9%. The audit on the presidential contest will be our typical batch comparison audit that we've done in the past. The audit on the House District 28 contest will be a ballot polling audit, which is a different type of audit, one that we do have experience with because we have run those. We ran those during our pilot in 2019. And we did run one in a Cranston contest in 2020 as well in Cranston as part of the overall audit. So we do have experience with running the batch comparison as well as the ballot polling audit. Now, as part of this audit, a random sample will be selected, and it will consist of these random batches of ballots from across the state to be manually tallied by teams. A batch would include a single DS-200 within a polling place, or the DS-200 at an early voting location, or a batch of ballots tabulated on a high-speed tabulator. The results will be entered into our audit software, and if necessary, additional rounds of the audit can be conducted if the first round does not sufficiently satisfy the risk limit of the audit. The staff tentatively plans to conduct a dice roll to generate this random seed for the audit for the selection of these batches on November 18th here in this building, in this room. The audit will be conducted on November 19th and November 20th if additional rounds are needed. The board and the public are welcome to attend and participate in both events. This concludes my report on the RLA contest selection, and I am happy to answer any questions from the board.
Thanks, Cal.
I have a question about, it's been a while since we had an RLA. Can you explain the difference between the batch and the ballot polling systems?
So a batch comparison is when we essentially, every machine is a batch out at the precinct. So if a polling place has 2 machines, that's 2 batches. If a early voting site has 3 machines, that's 3 batches. And every batch that we run on our 850, we run by city and town generally. So if we run 200 Cranston ballots, that's a batch. We put a sheet on it identifying exactly how many ballots are inside, how many ballots were run, and it's given a batch number. After election day and everything is counted and batched up into all of these batches, which could amount to something like 400 batches total, it's all put on a spreadsheet. So you'll have spreadsheet line 1 all the way down to line 400, and each line is a different batch. And then what we do is we run that through, we do the dice roll to have a completely random seed so that no one can say that we came up with a number or there's any sort of manipulation of the audit. We enter that random seed into the software, and based on that seed, it does a mathematical formula where it randomly picks the batches needed to conduct the audit. So when I say selects them, it might select 30 batches out of 400. And that means we have to go and get those 30 batches. So we either have to go to Barrington and get we have to get their ballots from machine A, because that's a batch. And we might have to go to Coventry, get ballots for machine B for their early voting, or for machine A for one of their precincts. So we request those ballots from the local board. And then once we have all those batches in the building, essentially what we do is a hand count. We open the boxes, we have teams set up, and if it's presidential contest, for example, if there are 7 candidates running for president, we have 7 piles of labeled sections of the table. And if it's a vote for Donald Trump, it'll be on this pile. If it's a vote for Kamala Harris, it'll be on this pile. So each one will go into a pile, and then the team, what they will do when they finish for that box, that section of ballots that they get from that batch, they will count how many votes in the first pile for Trump, how many ballots in the second pile for Harris, and just go down the line of presidential candidates, and they will tally how many votes for each. That is all compiled into our software based on the tally sheets that they pass along to the auditor. He enters it into the software, and then that compares the actual hand tally to what the machine tabulated. And depending on the percentage of what it's in the percentage, that's how you know that it meets the requirements of the audit. And there's always a slight deviation because they do get a manual count, sort of like a voter intent guide, adjudication guide, which we worked on and which the board has seen in the past, which says, what do you do if someone's circled? What do you do if someone has an X through them and then the other over is completed? So they go through that. And if there is any sort of miscalculation at a particular table, we have an additional review board that can actually redo the entire batch if need be. Or if there's a challenge or if there's some sort of disagreement between the 2 pairs, they don't agree who the vote is for, that goes to the additional review board to be reviewed. So at the end of review, hand tallying all of those batches, at the end you get a result, and if that result is within the risk limit, that's how we are confident that the results and the accuracy of the equipment is valid. The ballot polling method is a little bit different. It's really like a poll. It's like, I tell it like if you take a sample of the ballots, and so what happens is the random sample is created. We will select ballots that are out there in either at the polling place or in our possession here in our offices. But it's a little bit more specific. So if the software says you have to go to Coventry to precinct or Barrington precinct 0101, and you have to get ballot number 50 from machine A. The ballots aren't numbered, so it's very random. So we'll get the ballots from machine 50 here for part of the audit, and then we'll count down, just count down on the stack, count down all the way to 50, and pull that ballot and label it. That's going to be part of the audit. The benefits of that is that you only have to pull, for example, in this audit of this House District 28, which is in Coventry, we would only have to pull about 300 ballots out of the 7,000, approximately 7,000 casts in order to conduct an audit of the entire race. So essentially, it's going to make us pull 300 ballots from the 7,000. So all our peers will have to hand tally our 300 ballots. And entering that into the software, the results of that hand tally, the software will tell us if we're within the risk limit of the audit, of the outcome of that election being accurate. And so those are the two different types of audits. The reason why we don't do a ballot polling audit statewide is because it would entail a lot of ballots, way more than the batch comparison, and a lot more work, and it would take more time to do it. So the batch comparison is an accepted format of an RLA that's used by many jurisdictions that rely on precinct voting more so than all mail ballot voting.
So tell me, how do you determine the percentage, the risk? You said 9%. How's that a figure determined?
That is the percentage that the board set when we initiated risk limiting audits. That's a percentage that it's some jurisdictions use 5%, and we feel more comfortable with the 9% given the workload that we would have to do with the batch comparison, given our election structure and our system. Certainly something in the future we can look at doing it in a lower risk level, but the lower the risk level, the more time you need to conduct the audit and the more ballots you'll have to review.
So that'd be the same risk level for the ballot polling as well? 9%?
Yes, same risk level, yep.
Right, thanks.
Thank you. Anyone have any other questions or comments? Okay. John, you stuck around. And thank you for all your work on this. I know you've been passionate about it for a long time, and I can remember when we initially passed to start doing this. And for any board members that haven't been to roll the dice, I highly recommend it. And it is an interesting process. I participated last year, or the last election. Okay.
Madam Chair, I'll make a motion to approve the two contests for risk limiting audit as referenced by the director.
Great.
Second.
Moved and seconded. All in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? The ayes have it. That's it. Do we have a motion to adjourn?
So moved.
Moved and seconded. All in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Any opposed? The ayes have it. We are adjourned at 11:52 a.m.